All right. So we're at the Harmony of the Gospels, part 23. Part 23. Before I start today, because this obviously is a continuation of last week, can you think in one word about last week? One word, what the main theme was, and what is the most important, it's also the most important thing that a Christian must have.
Faith.
Faith. There we go. Faith. Without faith, there is nothing. And you will see today how important faith is. Well, we saw how important it was last time, too. How on earth could he sleep through that storm, right? You missed that part. Going across the ocean or across the sea. He slept through that.
Look for it on YouTube.
Look what he slept through that. Let's go to Matthew 9. In verse 1. And after going into the ship, he passed over and came to his own city. So he went back across the sea after he did what he did last time. And I'm going to go from Matthew and Mark and Luke. So I'm going to put my finger in all of those. We're in Matthew 9, we'll be in Mark 5, and we'll be in Luke 8. So I'm going to prepare that in advance because I've got to flip back and forth all over the place here. That's what you do when you're doing the harmony. So Mark 5 and 21. Now when Jesus had crossed to the other side of the sea by ship, a great multitude was gathered there to him, and he was by the sea. And Luke 8, verse 40. Now it came to pass that when Jesus returned, the multitude gladly received him, for they had all been looking for him. Now it's interesting that when he returned from his mission, that a great multitude was there waiting for him, gladly receiving him. What was the scene that was last happening on the other side of that sea? Do you remember? Do you remember? Oh, did you hear me? I will repeat it. Interesting how when he came to the other side of the sea, where he originally started from, before he went and the sea had a great tempest, when he came back, the great multitude received him, for they had all been looking for him. How does this scene contrast from the previous scene when he was on the other side of the sea? What was the last thing that happened there?
They wanted him to leave.
They wanted him to leave. Yes, everybody urged him because they feared something. Was it a fearing of losing more pigs or cattle, a great economic disaster, or did they fear him specifically because of these great miracles that he did? Doesn't say specifically, but they feared him on the other side and wanted him to get out of our sight, go quickly, leave. But when he came back to the other side, where he was performing miracles before he went to the other side, they gladly received him. Interesting. There's a difference in the attitudes of these people, isn't there? There's a difference in the attitudes of these people. Let's go to Matthew 9 again. We'll go to verse 18 actually. While he was saying these things to them, behold, a ruler came and worshipped him, saying, My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hands on her, and she shall live. Just died. Matthew's a little ahead of the the story when he says that. He's kind of abbreviating it a bit, and we'll see why. And then Jesus and his disciples rose and followed him. We'll go to Luke 8, verse 41. And behold, a man came whose name was Jairus, and he was a ruler of the synagogue. Interesting, a ruler of the synagogue. Generally, how did the rulers of the synagogue look upon Jesus by this point in time? Not very well, did they? But this man, he believed. He did. And he publicly went out before Jesus, and he fell at Jesus' feet, begging him to come to his house. What an astonishing thing for a ruler of the synagogue to do. He had to have had what? Faith, belief in this man, Jesus Christ. When how many of the rulers of the synagogue hated him and were plotting to kill him because he professed that he was the Son of God? Well, he didn't openly profess that so much, but yes. In some of the things that he said, yes, that was evident. And the things that he was doing, the miracles that he was performing, could only come from God. But they were accusing him of using Satan's power, weren't they? And if this man Jairus thought that he was using Satan's power to do things, why would he come before him like this, begging him, worshiping him, falling at his feet? This man knew. And you got to wonder how many others of the rulers of the synagogue knew also. But they were more concerned about their position and status and power and the way things were, the status quo. They were comfortable with the status quo, and they didn't want things to change. Now, he was a ruler of the synagogue, and after falling at Jesus' feet, he begged him to come to his house, because his only daughter, about 12 years old, keep that in mind, was dying. And as he went, the multitudes were thronging him. We'll go to Mark 5, verse 22. And behold, one of the rulers of the synagogue came, Jairus by name, and when he saw him, he fell at his feet, and he earnestly besought him, saying, My little daughter is at the point of death. I beg you to come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be healed, and she shall live. And he departed with him, and a great multitude followed him, pressing around him. A ruler of the synagogue. Wow. I mean, that's something. It really is. For him to come out like this publicly, when most of the rulers of the synagogue hated Jesus and were plotting to kill him. What must the rest of them thought of this man? How could you go before this man? What were you thinking? He was concerned about his daughter, was he not? His love for his daughter was that great, that he was willing to ostracize himself from the rest of the synagogue. Faith. Faith means that you can risk everything. You can risk everything because you have faith in God. You know that you are safe and secure. When the disciples were on that ship and they thought they were going to die, they didn't display any faith, did they? No. Jesus slept until he was awoken. He says, why are you fearing? I told you we're going to the other side. Where's your faith? Where is your faith? At the risk of your own life and at the risk of being ostracized by everybody you know. Faith. It's going to be tested. Faith will be tested. Yeah. Now we're in Luke 8 again, verse 43. Let's make sure I stay on the right thing here. And a woman who had been afflicted. Oh, this woman kind of comes in the middle of this. It interrupts this whole thing. Jesus is going to go and take care of Jairus' daughter, right? And in the middle of this, a woman who had been afflicted with a flow of blood for how many years? 12 years. Interesting. This man's daughter is 12 years old. And this woman, it's the same thing. It's kind of a coincidence, but it's interesting. This woman who has been afflicted with a flow of blood for 12 years and had spent her whole living on physicians, but could not be cured by anyone, came behind him and touched the border of his garment, and immediately the flow of her blood stopped. And Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And as everyone began to deny it, Peter and those with him said, "Master, the multitudes are thronging and pressing you, and you ask, 'Who touched me?'" What is curious about that statement?
We felt her amongst all the multitude.
Mm-hmm. And he asked specifically, "Who touched me?" He's being thronged by a great multitude of people pressing him. How many people would have touched him?
Only one had faith.
See, there's something there. Faith. How many people touched him? This great multitude were waiting for him to come back and eagerly received him and probably were mauling him, touching him, reaching out, stroking him, grabbing him maybe even. And yet this one woman who just touched the border of his garment, he noticed. He didn't see her, but he noticed that something happened. And it was because of faith. This woman had faith so great that out of the throng, the multitudes of people pressing against him, touching him, mauling him, grabbing him, whatever, he noticed very specifically that this woman grazed his garment. Faith. Faith is a very powerful thing. And if you have no faith, Christ can do nothing in your life. Nothing. You will not grow spiritually. You will not accomplish anything of God's will if you have no faith. You have to have faith. And not just a little. You have to have complete trust. Like that song we just read, or we just sang, trust and obey. Because there's no other way. You can't be happy in Jesus if you don't trust and obey. You have to have faith. And you have to have faith like this woman did to accomplish God's work. For Christ to do anything in your life. Mark 5:25. Then a certain woman who had been afflicted with an issue of blood for 12 years, and had suffered greatly under the hand of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was not benefited in any way, but rather was getting worse. She was at the point where she had nothing, and suffering for 12 years. When she heard about Jesus, she just heard about him. She hadn't seen him before. When she heard about him, came in the multitude behind him and touched his garment. For she said, "If I can only touch his garments, I shall be cured." She knew. She knew. Deep down within the deepest part of her, she knew that this man was the Christ. She knew that he could heal her. And at once the fountain of her blood was dried up. Not slowly, not gradually. Immediately. Immediately. And she knew in her body that she was healed from the scourge. She could feel it, she could tell, she knew. Now Jesus knew immediately within himself that power had gone out of him. And turning into the crowd, he said, "Who touched my garments?" That's how Jesus knew. Because something, a affected him also. He could feel something through himself, amongst all these other people that were grappling him, that something happened. He knew power had gone from him. The power of God, his Father, that works through him, did something. He knew. And he paused. When his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and you ask, 'Who touched me?'" They didn't even get it still. They didn't even understand still. Isn't that incredible to contemplate? They had just gone through this crazy storm on the sea. They thought they were going to die. And their master is sleeping on the ship, unconcerned. How do you sleep through that? I'm still amazed. How do you sleep through that? Good grief. Ship's going to overturn and sink. No, it's not, because Jesus was on there and he says he's going to go to the other side. But how do you sleep through that? Anyway, they had just gone through that, and Christ had already reprimanded them about their faith. Where's your faith? And then he had cast out a legion of demons from these two people. Probably 6,000. That's what a Roman legion is, right? And his disciples were witnessing this. And then this event happens. And they still don't get it? This woman who suffered for 12 years heard about Jesus, not spent weeks, months, years privately being taught by Jesus, witnessing all the miracles that he did, like the disciples did. This woman, only hearing about Jesus, knowing about him, urgently went to him and knew that all she had to do was just touch his garments and she would be healed. Is it any wonder that Jesus paused and sought out who this woman was? Because it was an astonishing thing for someone to have this kind of faith. An astonishing thing for someone to have this kind of faith. With Jesus right there, performing miracles all the time. And yet faith was so absent amongst people. We don't have Jesus here like that today amongst us. And yet we are required to have this kind of faith. Do you have this kind of faith? Do you really believe? Then he looked around to see who had done this, because he didn't know. He didn't know who actually did it. He could tell that something happened. He could tell that someone with great faith had touched him and was healed. And he wanted to know who. Interesting that he didn't know exactly who it was. He had to seek her out. And that his disciples didn't understand either. Where am I here? 132. I've lost my place. Mark 5, 224. Okay, there we are. I found it again. It's tough when you got to go from 3 different books here. Let's go to Matthew 9 again, verse 20. And behold, a woman who had been afflicted with a flow of blood for 12 years, and after coming behind him, touched the hem of his garment. For she said within herself, if only I shall touch his garment, I shall be healed. Luke 8:46. But Jesus said, someone touched me, because I know that power went out from me. That's what Jesus perceived. He could tell that power went out from him, and someone who had great faith had touched him. And he needed to address this. Mark 5:32. Then he looked around to see who had done this. And the woman, frightened and trembling, knowing what had been done in her, came and fell down before her and told him all the truth. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has cured you. Go in peace and be whole from your scourge. Your faith has cured you." How many times did we see before when someone displayed faith to Christ, the manner in which he said, okay, I'm going to answer your request, your prayer, but according to how your faith is, let it be done to you. And if your faith is true and honest, then your request, your prayer will be answered according to your faith. And if your faith isn't there, what will be the result? Nothing. Why did Peter start sinking in the ocean or in the sea when he was walking to Jesus? What kept him on the waters walking? Faith. And he became afraid. Why did he become afraid and start sinking? Because his faith wasn't there like it should have been. Faith can make you do all things. Faith can make a mountain move. Literally. Yes, it can. God's not going to make a mountain move as a showpiece like a David Copperfield show. He's not going to do that. But literally, yes, if it's required and if it's God's will, a mountain will move by faith. Yes, it will. Luke 8:47. Then the woman, seeing that her act was not concealed, she was trying to conceal it. She didn't want to bring attention. This was not a big show. She was ashamed of her condition. And she didn't want anybody to know. And privately, within herself, right, she wanted to just touch him as he was passing by. And she knew that would be enough, and then she would just quietly go away. That was her intention. She didn't want it to be a big show. And the woman, seeing that her act was not concealed, came trembling. Why trembling?
Afraid.
Yes, she was afraid. Should she have been afraid? Yes and no. If you're in the presence of God, not only would that be an astonishing thing, but it would be a fearful thing. If you're before the Prime Minister of Canada, he was going to shake your hand, how would you feel?
Anxious?
You would feel a bit anxious, wouldn't you?
Depends what you ask.
Somewhat. What about the Queen of England? If you're before her and she addressed you specifically and wanted to shake your hand, how would you feel?
I'm both frightened.
If you had a right heart, yes, you would. Yes, you would. You might not even be able to look her in the eye. Probably not. Maybe you could. But you get my point. If you're before God, she had the right attitude. She had the right heart. Through and through. By her very act here, that she was trying to keep it hidden. She didn't want to cause a scene. And then when she was called out, he was looking for her, she was afraid. Because she knew the presence that she was in. And after falling down in front of him, of course she would. Just like you would respect the Queen of England, or you should. If you don't, you have a problem within yourself. Yes, you do. If you can't respect authority on earth like that, like the Queen of England, for instance, or the Prime Minister of Canada, or the President of the United States even if you don't like his policies, you need to respect that authority. Right? But before God himself, falling down in front of him, before all the people, she declared for what cause she had touched him, and how she had immediately been healed. Immediately. And he said to her, "Be of good courage, daughter. Your faith has healed you. Go in peace." He reassured her. It's okay. This is a good thing. It's a great thing. And the reason you are healed is not because I'm here and because you touched me. All these people are touching me. It's because of your faith. Make sure that you remember that. Make sure that you know that it's because of your faith that you are healed. Do you think she retained her faith? Absolutely. Absolutely. Not like that other guy by the pool who couldn't get in, right? And was hoping that Jesus would help him in. And when he was healed and the Jews confronted him, he was afraid for himself, wasn't he? And immediately he was going to turn Jesus in. It was that guy, not me, you know? What kind of faith did that guy have? Matthew 9:22. But when Jesus turned, and seeing the woman, he said to her, "Be of good courage, daughter. Your faith has made you whole." And from that hour, the woman was healed. Faith like hers was rare. Astonishingly, faith like hers was rare. This was supposed to be God's people. This was supposed to be a group of people that knew God. They were supposed to already have faith. Faith like hers was rare, and it needed to be acknowledged. Partly to the crowd, partly to his disciples, but mostly and primarily to her herself, because she needed to know that her faith was that great, that it was her faith that healed her. And if your faith is great, God will be with you, and he will answer your prayers. Sometimes the answer is no, though. And you have to accept that. Need to be acknowledged. It is faith in Jesus Christ that allows us, by the mercy of God, through Christ's sacrifice of himself, payment for our sins, to receive by grace, a free will, salvation. By faith. And you can display your faith by how you do things, by what you do. Luke 8:49. While he was yet speaking, one came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, "Your daughter has died. Do not trouble the master." In this time that it took to heal this woman, and seeking her out and having this conversation, Jairus' daughter died. She was that far gone already. Do not trouble the master. How much faith was there amongst the people who reported it to Jairus? None, really. Maybe a little that, well, while she was alive, maybe he could do something. Maybe he could do something. Well, now she's dead already. It's too late. Don't bother the master. How much faith was there amongst those people? Mark 5:35. While he was yet still speaking, they came from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher any longer?" The teacher. Why bother the teacher? Not why bother the Son of God any longer. Because if they actually knew who he was and believed in who he was, they wouldn't have asked that very thing to Jairus. They wouldn't have said that. Why bother the teacher any longer? That woman who was healed knew who Jesus was. Her faith was strong. Luke 8, verse 50. But hearing this, Jesus answered him, saying, do not be afraid. Only what? Believe, and she shall be restored. Not because I have to go there, right? I don't have to go there at all, Jesus is saying. But what do you need? You need to believe. Really, wholeheartedly. Have faith. Don't be afraid. Have faith, like this woman did. And she shall be restored, even though she's already dead. Faith. Mark 5:36. But when Jesus heard the words that were spoken, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, do not be afraid, only believe. Faith is a must, an absolute must. Luke 8:51. And when he went into the house, he did not allow anyone to go in with him, except Peter and James and John and the father and the mother of the child. It was a private matter. It's not a big show. It's a private matter. He's not there to entertain the multitude. This is not a magic show. We're not on stage here. It's private. It's a matter of faith. And they were all weeping and bewailing her. But he said, do not weep. She is not dead, but is sleeping. Sleeping. Then they did what? Laughed at him. What do you mean she's sleeping? She's dead. You say she's sleeping? They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. Laughed at him. How much belief was there in that house? But Jesus is there and he's doing this because he's trying to make a point. He singled out that woman who touched him and was healed because of her faith. And this is the point. I know she is dead. She's only just sleeping, really, because to God, death is just asleep. But you have to have faith. You have to believe. If you don't believe, it won't happen. Mark 5:37. And he did not allow anyone to accompany him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. Now when he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, he saw a tumult, and people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he entered, he said to them, why are you making a tumult, weeping? The child is not dead, she is only sleeping. And they laughed at him in disbelief. In disbelief. But after he had put them all out, he took with him the father and the mother of the child, and those with him, and went into the room where the child was laying. In Matthew 9:24 it says, he said to them, back away, for the damsel is not dead, she is sleeping. And they laughed at him. Laughed at him. Again, underscoring what is required, what is necessary for Jesus' miracles to occur. Faith. What is required for Jesus to be able to do anything in your life? Faith. How much faith do you have on a day-to-day basis? How much do you really have on a day-to-day basis? Luke 8:54. But after putting everyone outside, he took hold of her hand and called out, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she immediately arose. And he directed her that something to eat should be given to her. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them not to tell anyone what had happened. Keep it to yourself. It's a matter of faith. It's a private thing. It's not a public display. It's not a show. This isn't Chris Angel. You know? Matthew 9:25. But when the multitude had been put out, he went in and took hold of her hand, and the damsel arose. And this report went out into all the land. Mark 5:41. And taking the child by the hand, he said to her, Talitha, Kuma. I don't know if I said that right. Which is being interpreted, little girl, I say to you, arise. And immediately the little girl arose and walked, for she was 12 years old. And they were filled with great amazement. Then he strictly charged them that no one should know this. And he told them to give her something to eat. Strictly told her, or told them that no one should know this. Again, why would he tell them that? Strictly commanding them not to go about boasting about this? It's a matter of faith. It's not a show. If the multitude doesn't have faith, they won't get it just by hearing about it or by listening to what you said with that. No. They've seen me do many things already. Faith, your faith, is a private matter between you and God, how much faith you have. But you can show it outwardly by how you live and what you do. Now, what are the similarities and differences between these two events? The woman with the issue of blood and Jairus' daughter. "12 years is one thing. It's interesting. This woman suffered for 12 years. 12 years. And she spent all that she had. She saw everybody possible. And she was desperate. Jairus' daughter was 12 years old. She was probably very healthy until that last year. Complete opposite. That's just an observation. Don't know if that's significant or not. Jairus was a Jewish leader. A very respected one, apparently. And this woman was probably a relative nobody. Right? Probably. Lots of people knew that his daughter was sick and she was dying. Probably not a lot of people knew specifically what this woman's problem was. It was more private. The most important thing that was in common, but what was more specific to the woman, was faith. It doesn't say specifically if Jairus laughed amongst all the other people around his house, but the people around did, his servants and the ones who came and said, "Don't bother the master or the teacher anymore, your daughter's already dead." Those are the ones who I'm sure laughed. Did Jairus laugh? It didn't say specifically whether he did or not, but I don't think so. I don't think Jairus laughed at all. I think he did believe. In fact, I'm sure of it. Because that's why Jesus went, and that's why his daughter was healed. Because he had faith. Those around him did not. And Jesus didn't want those people around to witness this. If you don't have faith in me, go away. You don't belong to me. Go live your life. Do whatever. Your time will come. Your judgment will come. You need to have faith in me. Not me, Jesus. Matthew 9:27. Now as Jesus was traveling there, 2 blind men followed, crying, saying, "Have pity on us, Son of David." Son of David. They knew who this guy was. They knew who Jesus was. And after coming into the house, the blind men came to him, and Jesus said to them, "You okay? Do you believe that I have the power to do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Do you believe? Then he touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, be it to you." Again, according to your faith. He asked them, "Do you believe that I can do this?" And they said, "Yes." Okay then. You say that you believe. I will test it. According to your faith, let it be done. If they were lying and they didn't truly believe, would their sight have been restored? No. No, it would not. According to your faith, let it be done. Interesting how that works, isn't it? It works the same for us in our life today. According to your faith, it will be done to you. If you have no faith or little faith, not much will be accomplished in you and in your life. Ever. Until you have faith. You have to trust, even with your life, to that point. If you do not, nothing will occur in your life. And their eyes were opened, and he sternly warned them, again, sternly warned them, saying, "See that you do not let anyone know it." But they went out and made him known in all the land. They had to tell people anyway. Faith cannot be spread. Faith is not an infection. You can't get faith by hearing of some great miracle or something. It comes from within. It comes from within your own heart. And faith is tested. Faith was tested. Faith was tested in these cases because nothing would have happened to these people if there was no faith present. And it's not the multitude's business. Keep it to yourself. And as they were leaving, behold, they brought to him a dumb man, possessed by a demon. Another demon. Where does demons come from? Why is there so many demons in the land of Judea and in Israel? And how much in the other parts of the world? Where are they today? Are they out there today? Are people possessed right now? And when the demon had been cast out, the one who had been dumb spoke, and the multitudes wondered, saying, "Never has a like been seen in Israel." Never. But the Pharisees said, "By the prince of the demons he casts out demons." These guys never learn, do they? Jairus knew. He didn't believe that. Do you think for a minute if Jairus thought by the prince of demons he's going to heal my daughter that Jesus would have done that? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But his colleagues think that. How do you think they would have treated him after this? What's the rest of the story behind him? Was he cast out of the synagogue? Was he not a leader in the synagogue anymore after this? I don't know. But you got to wonder, how was he treated by his colleagues after that? You gotta wonder. His life didn't matter to him. He showed Jesus faith. The rest of his life could have been ruined in what he did as a leader in the synagogue and the respect that he had amongst his colleagues, his other elders, right? And yet, that didn't matter. What mattered to him was his daughter. And he displayed the faith that was necessary for his daughter to be healed. And the rest of his life be damned. You know, it doesn't matter what his colleagues thought of him. I'll go be a carpenter, or I'll do whatever. Who knows what happened with him? Then Jesus went around to all the cities and the villages, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every bodily weakness among the people. And seeing the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were wearied and scattered abroad, as sheep who do not have a shepherd. Even when faith wasn't deep and openly displayed like that, he had compassion on these people. He came to save. He came so that people could have belief in him and could have faith in him. And he had great compassion. He died for them and for us. And he said to his disciples, "The harvest is truly great, but the workmen are few. Therefore, beseech the Lord, or earnestly ask God, that he may send out workmen into the harvest." We have to be active. We have to be active in our faith. And I think we're probably going to run out of time with the camera today because the battery's low. So I'll stop there and we'll continue another time, okay?
I don't know how it made it. Hey.
How much time was left?